Welcome, my name is Dr. Kingsley. In my previous class, I discussed digestion, the digestive system, what it is. Okay, I also told you the different parts of the digestive system and discussed in details digestion in the mouth, the role of saliva and salivary gland, okay, the role of the teeth, the tongue, and the lips. Now, today, I'll be discussing digestion in the stomach. Digestion in the stomach. Now, after food is digested in the stomach, in the mouth, okay, it moves down to the stomach. Now, through the what? Through the esophagus. There is no digestion in the stomach because it does not contain enzymes. Now, after digestion in the mouth, the food have to move from the mouth into the stomach, and it does that by a kind of movement we call peristalsis. Peristalsis, okay. Peristalsis is what? Is a kind of what? Wave-like movement, contraction and relaxation. So the esophagus contracts, relaxes to move food from mouth into the stomach. Now, when food is in the stomach, there is digestion because stomach contains digestive what? Enzymes. Now, if you look at this diagram on the board here, you will find out that what? That the stomach is a muscular J-tube organ. It is muscular, it is J-tube organ, okay, located between the esophagus and the what? Small intestine. That is the location between esophagus and small intestine. Now, before we go on, we need to look at what? The different parts of the stomach so that we'll be able to understand digestion very well there. So we have a stomach. What are the what? The different part of stomach. The first part of stomach is the cardiac. The second part is the fundus. The third part is the body, while the last part of the stomach, okay, is the pylorus. Pylorus. So there are four parts, or four different parts of the stomach. Now we will take cardiac and fundus together. Cardiac and fundus are located at the upper part of the stomach. Now, if you look at the diagram, I use alphabet A, B, C, and D to show these four different parts. A is the cardiac, B is the fundus, C is at the middle of the stomach, and that is the body. While D is the last part of what? The stomach, which is the what? The pylorus. Now, the A and B, which is a cardiac and fundus, are located at the upper part of the stomach. Now, the esophagus opens into the stomach through what we call cardiac sphincter. Cardiac sphincter. The cardiac sphincter is a muscular. It is what? Muscular. Now, that is a gatekeeper between the esophagus and the what? And the stomach. So the first portion of the stomach that leads through the esophagus into the stomach is the cardiac sphincter. Now, what is the function of cardiac and fundus, which is the upper part of the stomach? Remember, number one is a storage. They have storage function. Anytime food enters into the stomach from the esophagus, the first part that welcomes the food is the cardiac and fundus, okay, and they have storage function. They store the food, there for a while. Then number two, they produce mucus. The cardiac and fundus produces mucus. What is the function of this mucus? The function of the mucus is number one, to lubricate food, to allow easy movement to other part of the stomach. Then number two is that the mucus, okay, protect the walls of the what? Stomach. it have a protective function, protecting the walls of the stomach, okay, from acid, because the stomach is acidic. Then number 3 is what is mechanical digestion. The cardiac and fundus, okay, they contract, although their contraction is very mild. They contract, and as they are contracting, okay, they are beating food, helping mechanical digestion. Before we continue, if you like this class, subscribe so that you can be getting step-by-step tips and lessons on biology and chemistry to help you prepare for your exam. Thank you. So we come to the third part of the stomach. The third part of the stomach, okay, is the body. The body, okay. The body is the third part, is the largest part of the stomach. The largest part of the stomach. So the wall of the largest part of the stomach, which is the central part of the stomach, the body, okay, contains glands that we call the gastric gland. Okay, this gastric gland secretes HCl. The gastric gland also secretes what? Mucus. The gastric gland also secretes what? Digestive enzymes. Digestive enzymes. You also secrete what? Intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is a glycoprotein. Okay, that is the secretions. Okay, now it also contains water. The gastric gland, the secretion also contains water, about 90% water. So that is to say that what? The gastric gland, okay, secretes what we call gastric juice. And this gastric juice, what they contain is HCl, mucus, digestive enzymes, intrinsic what? Factor, and water. Water is about 90% of the gastric juice secreted by the what? The gastric gland. Now, as a gland, it must be made up of cells. So it is the cells of this gland that is actually what? Secreting this what? This component. Now, the cells of the gastric gland that secrete gastric juice are of 3 types. So we have what? 3 types of gastric what? Cells that secrete their products. So we'll come to cells of the what? Gastric gland. And I told you that we have what? 3 cells of the gastric gland that empty their secretions. The first one is the parietal cells. The parietal cells is also known as oxyntic cells. So either you call it parietal cells or you call it what? Oxyntic cell. Then the second cell of the gastric gland is the chief cells. The chief cells. While the third is the mucus cells. So these are the 3, okay, cells of the gastric gland. Now it is time for us to look at what they secrete and their function. So we'll start with the what? The parietal, also known as the oxyntic cells. So the parietal cells. Now, the parietal cells secrete 2 things. Number 1 thing that it secretes is what? The intrinsic factor. Then number 2 secretion of the parietal cell is HCl. So we go to what? Intrinsic factor. Now the intrinsic factor is a glycoprotein. Okay, intrinsic cell is a glycoprotein. Now glycoprotein is a complex formed from carbohydrates. You see the word glyco, from the word that is a glucose or glycogen. Are you getting me now? So it's what? It's a carbohydrate. Glyco, protein. So it's a complex made up of what? Carbohydrates and protein. Now, what is the function of the glycoprotein? The glycoprotein function is to aid absorption of vitamin B12. So in the stomach, vitamin B12 can be absorbed. And what aids or helps the absorption is this intrinsic what? Factor. Then we go to the what? The next, which is what? HCl. What is the function of the HCl? Secreted by the parietal cells or oocytic cells of the third part of the stomach. Now, the function of HCl. Now, number one function of HCl is that it provides acidic medium. Okay, it provides acidic medium for stomach. Why acidic medium? Because the enzymes, digestive enzymes in the stomach, they work better in acidic medium. Now remember that the food that is coming from the mouth is alkaline. So this acid will help to do what? To neutralize that alkaline, to make the stomach to remain acidic for optimal functioning of what? Of the digestive enzymes there. Then number two function of the HCl is that it has protective function. So it kills bacteria. It kills bacteria. Okay, that is one of the function of what? Of the HCl. Okay, in the stomach. Then number three, okay, it activates, okay, one of the enzymes that digest protein. That enzyme is a pepsinogen. Pepsinogen. So pepsinogen is an enzyme, okay, an enzyme in inactive form. Although it's an enzyme, but it is not active. Until it is activated, it cannot digest the protein it is meant to digest in the stomach. So it is activated to become a pepsin. It is only when pepsinogen is in the form of pepsin that it will be able to digest what? Protein. So it's a zymogen. It's a zymogen. So zymogens are enzymes that are in their inactive form. So it's a zymogen. So the acid HCl activates it. Why is it in inactive form? It is because something is blocking the what? The catalytic site. So the amino acids in the catalytic sites of this pepsinogen blocks it or block it from catalyzing. So the HCl cleavages those amino terminals so that the active sites will be free. So when they are cleaved, this pepsinogen now becomes what? Pepsin, and now it is in the active form to digest a protein. Then number fourth what function of the HCl is to denature protein. So it denatures what? Protein. Until proteins are denatured, their digestion is not what? Is not fast. So it denatures protein to make it what? Fast. To make the digestion of the protein to be very fast. So we have looked at what? The parietal cells. Now let us go to the third cell of the gastric what? Gland. The third cell is the chief cells. What is the function of the chief cells? Now the chief cells, okay, they secrete what? Digestive enzymes. They secrete digestive enzyme. One of the digestive enzyme they secrete is the pepsinogen. Okay, the pepsinogen, which is activated to become what? Pepsin. What is the function of this what? Of this pepsin? The function of the pepsin is to convert what? It converts cooked protein, or it digests cooked protein to polypeptide. So that is the function. Pepsin digests, because it's an enzyme, it digests cooked protein, converting it to what? Polypeptide. The number 2 enzyme that chief cells secrete is renin. Renin is present in infants, that is in children, infants. Now this renin is also called chymosin. It curdles what? Milk protein. It curdles. Remember, milk protein is soluble protein. So, and that soluble milk protein is called carcinogen. That is what? Milk protein. What is milk protein called again? Milk protein is called carcinogen, and it is what? Soluble. But this renin, an enzyme, acts on what? On this carcinogen, which is soluble. Okay, converting it to what? Insoluble casein. So you convert it to insoluble casein. Then this casein can now be acted by what? Pepsin. Okay, and converting it to what? Converting it to polypeptide. So we now have what? Pepsin coming in to convert the casein to polypeptide. So you see what happens is that what? The milk protein is carcinogen and is soluble. So renin curdles it. Renin converts it to insoluble casein. Then that casein can now be acted by what? Pepsin to be converted to what? Polypeptide. So that is the second secretion of the what? Chief cells. Remember, chief cells, they secrete what? Digestive enzymes. Now the third enzyme that the chief cells secrete is gastric lipase. The gastric lipase, okay, secreted help to digest, okay, fats to fatty acids. They help to digest fats, lipids, I mean to say. They help to digest what? Fats or lipids to fatty acid and diacylglycerol. So that is the function of the gastric lipase. But the digestion here is very minor. So that is to say that what? The major digestion that takes place in the stomach is actually the digestion of what? Proteins. Because the lipids or fats that is digested, okay, in the stomach is very minimal. Now, having talked about the second cells of the gastric gland, we come to the third. The third is the mucus cells. The mucus cells secrete what? Mucus. The function is to what? To protect the walls of the stomach from acid. So you see that what? The stomach contains HCl. The concentration of HCl in the stomach is about 1 to 1.5 in pH. You can see that is a very conc acid, yet it is not what? It is not affecting us or eating up our stomach, because the mucus cells produces enough mucus, okay, to protect the walls of what? Of this stomach from the harmful effects of the HCl acid. Okay, before we continue, if you like this video, this class, please help me now to subscribe to my channel, okay, so that you can be getting more tips on biology and chemistry, okay, that will help you in exam. Now, the last part of the stomach, okay, we have discussed the first part of the stomach, okay, we have also discussed the third part. We now come to what? The third part of the stomach. Now the third, which is the fourth, which is the last part of the stomach, is what? Pylorus. Okay, I told you that the stomach is divided into three. We have the cardiac, into four. We have the cardiac, okay, we have the fundus, the body, and we have the what? Pylorus. We have discussed the first two, which is cardiac and fundus. We have also discussed the central part, which is the body. Okay, now we are now coming to the fourth part of the stomach, which is the pylorus. The pylorus is the last part of the stomach. It is narrow. Okay, it connects the stomach to the what? To the small intestine. It links the stomach to the first part of the small intestine. The first part of the small intestine is called duodenum. So the pylorus connects stomach into the duodenum. Now the part that connects stomach, okay, or the part of the pylorus that connects stomach to the duodenum is called pyloric, okay, sphincter. The pyloric sphincter is a gatekeeper between the stomach and the small intestine. Now, this pyloric sphincter is muscular, okay, is muscular and it is narrow. Now, what is the function of the pylorus? The functions of the pylorus, number one, it contracts, so it helps digestion, that is mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion. It is the part of the stomach that have the highest what? Contraction. We know that what is mild contraction here. There is also contraction, okay, at the body, but there is a much contraction at the pylorus. So thereby helping to digest food mechanically. Another one is that what? It secretes what? A hormone. It secretes a hormone that we call gastric what? Hormone. Gastric hormone. The gastric hormone is secreted by G cells. By cells we call the what? The G cells. Now remember the other secretion that I gave you is what? Enzymes. Now but this one is what? Hormones. Secreted by G cells. Now what is the function of this gastric hormone? The function of the gastric hormone is that what? It okay, signals, okay, the gastric gland to secrete digestive enzyme. What does it then mean? It means that the pylorus actually what? Controls the digestion of food in the stomach, because without the signaling of the gastric hormone, okay, the gastric hormone, the gastric gland will not secrete their enzymes or other of their secretions. Okay, now that is the function of the pylorus. Okay, all right. Another function is what? It controls the entrance of food into the stomach. It controls the entrance of food into the stomach. So movement of food in the stomach is actually controlled here. So anytime food enter from the mouth into the stomach, the gastric what? Hormones will be what? Activated. Release their distance to signal the gastric gland to begin to produce enzymes. Now, after digestion in the stomach, okay, the food, which is the bolus from the mouth that enters into the stomach, is now in a semi what? Solid form. It will be in a semi solid form. That semi solid form is called the what? The chyme. So chyme now enters into the small intestine where digestion continues. So I've been able to tell you about digestion in the stomach and what happens there. Please subscribe to my videos, my channel I mean. Subscribe to my channel, share my video and like them. It will help you. Thank you.